Can Penn State finally get a breakthrough in a big game? And yes, I'm going to go out on a limb and say Oregon counts. That's Roman Tomashoff, Locked On Huskies, here to discuss. Why is Roman here? Well, because Roman, you have seen your team get, shall we say, taken care of by both of these teams. Penn State wasn't close. Oregon also was not particularly close. Do you think this game on Saturday night will be tight?
Yeah, first of all, I knew that was exactly the route you were going to have to open with when you texted me about this earlier
I'm just laying out the facts.
No, notice how I'm not arguing that point at this particular moment. No, you're absolutely right. I do think it's going to be a close game where I look at this and I'm really intrigued by the matchups where Spencer, you did a fantastic job on Lockdown Ducks talking about the matchup with Tyler Warren, the Penn State tight end, where he's such a fun player to watch, just all the different ways they like using him, where you look at him and what they like lining him up in the Wildcat. One thing that's really interesting, a little stat, when Washington played Penn State to that point in the season, when Tyler Warren lined up as the Wildcat quarterback, on all but one of those plays did he take the carry. So there's a fairly high percentage that when he lines up in that spot, that he's going to keep the football. Just something
he tried to throw on one of them, didn't he? And it didn't work.
Yeah, that was that, and that was the Washington game. Correct me if I'm wrong there, but that's
right.
just an interesting note there. So that's something I just really enjoy watching, just different inventive little things like that. But this game, Spencer, we talked about it over on the Big Ten Squad. This game's going to be won and lost in the trenches. That's the biggest thing here. And, having to watch Washington get overwhelmed in that department. I think there are a lot of great players in this game. Personally, and this is not even, coming from the flag in the background here, I think the best player in either trench right now is Abdul Carter. That guy is just so much fun to watch. He can be a real game changer. But I think Oregon's offensive line is pretty well equipped to handle him. So the more I watch it, the more I say this is going to be a really fun game. I think it's going to be a real close one.
Yeah, I don't expect there to be a blowout in conference championship weekend. I think, frankly, if there was going to be one, it'd be the Friday night game in the Mountain West, and Boise could run away from UNLV. And I don't expect that to happen, by the way. UNLV had every opportunity to win. They were at home for that one, and obviously won't be for the conference title game. But I think that every Power 4 game you can look at for the conference championships, you can say it's going to come down to the trenches, right? Oregon, Penn State, I agree with you. And I've talked about the same thing over on Locked On Ducks. Like that's where this matchup, I think, ultimately gets defined. Can Abdul Carter and company pressure Dylan Gabriel? If you can't, good luck. Good luck with that receiving core. But if you can, then Oregon's offense will look maybe more like it did in the first two games of the season when it struggled. Surprise, surprise, no quarterback is good when he's under pressure. Conversely, can Penn State protect Drew Aller? Because the Oregon defensive line maybe doesn't have a guy as good as Abdul Carter, but has got a couple of guys that are going to be playing on Sunday in Mateo Uyunglele and Jordan Birch, Derek Harmon as well on the interior. Like, they're deep. They are very talented. So that's why I think the trench matchup is so big. But I don't feel that way about every power conference game. I talked about the ACC on yesterday's show, and I said specifically, this is not a trenches game to me. I don't think that's where it gets defined. I think that game rides on which quarterback outplays the other. I think the same thing about the Mountain West title game. So it sounds blanket, generic, well, it's defined in the trenches. I think for this particular game, it really will be, because either side has the ability, Roman, to take over with their defensive line, and it's a matter of which side's going to be able to enforce their will more.
So I completely agree with you there. Let me throw one other key player at you in this game. That's Tatum Tuioti, the Oregon linebacker, where the more I look at him, just watching Drew Aller, I'm very high on Drew Aller's future. I think he has the potential to be a really, really good quarterback in the NFL. He's got all the intangibles. I hate making the Wyoming Josh Allen comparison to guys. I don't want to use it lightly, but that's what he is. That's what he can be. When he's on, it's wow. Look at this
I don't
guy.
know that he moves as well as Josh Allen does, but he's got a much bigger arm than most people probably think.
That's why I say Wyoming Josh Allen. We didn't know that he moved as well as he did once he got to the NFL. That's kind of where I get to that comparison. Where I say Drew Aller, we know he moves well. It's not that good. That's why I want to be clear. It's not that level, but he runs very effectively. He runs very well. He's very good at getting outside of the pocket when he needs to. So when I watched, Damon Williams get sacked 10 times by this Oregon defensive line, one guy that did a really fantastic job was Tatum Tuioti on the quarterback spies and just getting him out of the pocket when he does decide to roll out. And Damon, like I said, I'm a big fan of Drew Aller's athleticism. Damon is a much better athlete than Drew Aller is or ever will be. And I just look at it and I say, that's one of those guys where if you're able to contain him, if he gets outside the pocket, you're going to have a good time on defense. You could probably rack up 3-4 sacks. But I look at, this Penn State offensive line and I say, all right, like, are you going to be able to hold up? Because in the run game, they certainly haven't been able to over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, and the thing that I wonder about with the passing game for Penn State, do you have an off speed that isn't Tyler Warren? That's your fastball, right? That's 98 coming down the middle or located up and in. Try and hit it. Good luck. He's got over 1,000 total yards this year, 978 of them, I think, and 6 touchdowns are through the air. Can Penn State protect Drew Aller enough to allow him to be effective, to allow him to create explosives like he did against USC? Because if there's a weakness on this Oregon defense, and there are not a lot, they're one of the 10 best in the country in yards allowed per game and points allowed per game. Like they've been really, really good. But if there is a weakness, their 2 safeties, Kobe Savage and Tysheem Johnson, I would not describe either one of them as dynamite cover guys. Tackling in the backfield and in space, really good. But over the top, they're not super rangy. One-on-one in coverage, they're not exceptional. And if Warren gets matched up with those guys, I don't know if that's going to be a favorable matchup for the Ducks. And I think they're going to rely on that defensive line, going back to what we talked about, how important the trenches are in this game. The Oregon defensive line, I think, is the best weapon that the Ducks have to try and slow down Tyler Warren in the passing attack.
So I agree with you there, but this is just another thing where what is this Penn State passing game going to look like in that sense? Where is Andy Kotelnick going to come into this game and say, hey, no matter what, even if I do want to trust my offensive line and, take a couple deep shots at Julian Fleming or whatever it is in that sense, are you like, is that really what you want to do? Or are you just going to come into this game and say, hey, we're going to spread them out. We're going to try to get as many guys as we can out into space and just utilize the quick passing game, or two seconds, that ball needs to be out. Whatever it is, just get the ball, make the read. And if you need to throw it at Tyler Warren 20 times, like you did against USC, I don't like. Spencer,
and by the way, when Oregon played a limited Michigan passing attack with Colston Loveland, he had 7 catches for 119 yards.
Yeah.
You knew where the ball was going. They weren't able to come up with answers consistently.
Exactly. And that's my whole point, where you look at it and you say, again, they did that against USC. They knew that you could attack them there, and they did it. They did it over and over and over and over again, and did it really effectively, like 4 verts in Madden, like you and I both, or College Football 25, a little more accurate.
I'm an EA college football kind of guy.
As am I. But when I look at it, it's okay. Is that something that's going to work over and over again? If you want to just isolate Tyler Warren out wide, or is Oregon going to want to say, hey, let's put a corner out there on him, or is it going to be, hey, we're going to walk Kobe Savage down, we're going to walk Tysheem Johnson down and do something like that? I'm really curious how they're going to try to counter that.
Yeah, I am as well. Or do they put a linebacker out there? Devin Jackson's a guy who had a lot of success in pass coverage against Wisconsin, against Ashton Genty of Boise State earlier this year, had some great moments, and he's probably the fastest of the Oregon linebackers, but he's got the size to match up with Warren. So maybe that's where they go. I don't know. I think that's interesting. One other final thing before I hold you to a score prediction here is Oregon's rushing attack popped last week against Washington, and that's why they had 49 points. This is not an Oregon offense that will go for 35 or 40 plus and have 380 through the air. Like Dylan Gabriel's good, capable, great wide receiving core, really good offensive line, one of the 3 finalists for the Joe Moore Award. For them to be at their best, they've got to be able to run the football. And they did that last week. For just the 4th time this year, they hit 200 yards on the ground. I don't know if you do that against Penn State, but if Oregon gets in the 175 range against Penn State, that is game over. That is absolutely game over. I think the underrated stat in this game is Oregon's offensive line ran all over Washington because they don't have the guys up front, but Penn State certainly is more capable in that department. Can they hold Oregon to 130, 120 like other teams have and make Dylan Gabriel throw the ball at a high level?
And the one thing that's going to come down to is tackling in space.
Yes.
Where I talked about on On Huskies coming into the Oregon game, where that Jordan James is going to run through somebody.
Yes.
Where I texted you about that during the Washington game. I was having nightmares about this exact.
He's not going to run around you. He's going to run right through you.
He's going to run right through your face, and you need to try and stop it. And I think Penn State has the bodies to do it, but with some of the injuries they've suffered in that front 7 especially, we'll see what that's going to look like.
Roman Tomashoff, Locked On Huskies, your score prediction for the Big Ten title game. I've got Oregon 27-17.
I said this on the Big Ten squad the other day. I'm going to stick with it. Penn State 34, Oregon 31.
Oh, just like that. The W and all. Roman Tomashoff, appreciate it as always, my man.